Record. Okay, so now we are recording now. So after the class, I will share the link, and you guys can follow up the conversation. And as we said, welcome to the class. This is a combined class, MPhil MBA, and certainly you have a much more insightful positions, than your undergrad days. So majority of the conversation is going to be driven by you guys. Interventions, I'll come in with interventions, but I expect that, you guys make a lot more of the contribution. And as I said, the class is much more interactive, is liberal, highly, I would say highly informal, because I do not like that formal structure of, engaging. So feel free, and then let's make sure that we have a very fruitful and fun class. Okay. All right. So back to my question that I was asking earlier. When you think about the word relationship, without necessarily thinking about relationship marketing, but let's put relationship in our usual context, all right, our normal life context, the word relationship, what words or what concepts, what ideas do come to your head or do come to mind, when you hear about, the word relationship? Bafo?
Connection.
Connection. So yes, there must be connection. Can you elaborate on that for us a little bit?
Um, so when I think about relationship, I see it as two or more people coming together, connect on a common idea
Okay.
or basis.
Okay, great. So the key word here is about two parties, two or more parties. So there are some individuals that are actually coming together, and the connection, that's what you mean by a connection, coming together on a common interest. So there's also an interest here that is actually bringing them together. All right. Fantastic point. Okay. Who else? Next person, I think we have Eunice. Eunice, you're on mute.
Doc, please, I think a relationship is basically about interactions between people.
Interaction, fantastic. So yeah, the parties have interaction. And by interaction here, we don't mean just one off. The idea of interaction suggests a continuous process, all right? So in a relationship is not, the kind of, what do you call engagement that is one off or one-sided, because the idea of interaction connotes, or the idea of interactivity connotes a continuous process from both sides or within the parties of the relationship. So that's another keyword that we actually realizing in terms of the word relationship. Fantastic, thank you. Next person is Nuruddin.
Yes, I look at relationship in the sense of two or more people coming together for a benefit.
Okay.
So the people are in to sacrifice. So something must give. So you give and you get a return.
Okay.
And
so
that giving and getting a return is not a one-off thing. It should be enduring, and it should be long-lasting.
Excellent. That's a great emphasis on the initial thought that we actually came up with. Ekuya.
I also see relationship as having a network with someone where you exchange information about what you think is useful or not. So an exchange of information. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So again, we have an exchange, concept here, and the exchange, earlier on we talked about of value, but now we're also talking about information, which actually emphasizes on the interaction point made, and then gives, some kind of thoughts on the other concept that we have already, put out. So fantastic point about, information exchange. Thank you. Who else? Who else want to add? Okay. All right. So the idea of relationship, if we have to think about it, okay, Lawrence, come in.
Yes, Doc. I think relationships, at least most of them, should be intentionally cultivated, and that should lead to the long-lasting bit. Aside maybe some things like maybe love at first sight, I think most relationships are intentionally cultivated, putting in effort, putting in communication to maintain the relationship. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, dimension. So the two dimensions here, two keywords that Bafo actually, what do you call, Lawrence actually, came up with. One of them is deliberation. The idea that there is an intention or there's a deliberate, attempt to create it. So relationship has a dimension of deliberation, in that. But also the word cultivation, it means that you have to start it, at the point and grow it, because the word cultivation means that, there is something that you're nurturing, there's something that you're growing, all right? So relationships comes from that perspective, fantastic point. So in that case, I mean, from the point that we have actually, outlined, if someone asks you to put down the framework for relationship, what are the variables that you're going to identify as being some of the inputs that you would actually, bring on board in terms of, a relationship, construct? What are some of the things that you have to actually think about, the variables? Of course, you can type in the chat box, or you can actually, lift up your hand. So those of you, if it's not your turn, but you want to put it in the chat box, you can always do that. Yeah? Claudia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interaction.
So we have interaction, yes. We've mentioned all those things, but let's move the conversation forward, beyond what we have already discussed, in terms of adding on to the framework or the variables. Yeah. What else? Okay. So let me reposition or rephrase okay. So service, we've mentioned communication, service, meaningful communication. Another person says, okay, so Isaac talked about service, meaningful communication by Lawrence. No, the relationship should be mutually beneficial. Okay. So let me throw in this loyalty. Okay. So now, when you talk about relationship, are you able to build relationship without knowing someone? Yeah.
No, dog.
Okay. So, Bafo, can you expand on it for us?
Before you build a relationship, you have to create a link. That link is where you get to know the person and the person to know you. So if the person is new and you have never had a meeting before, that person is a stranger. Therefore, there's no relationship there, unless a first step is taken by one person.
Okay. All right. Great point. So, in terms of knowing, how would you describe, or what are some of the elements that you would use to describe the idea of knowing? Nuruddin, your hands is up.
Depending on the reason for the interaction. So relationship cannot be built overnight. Just like somebody said, love at first sight doesn't work. It takes time. So the interaction over time will lead to understanding each other, and then that will bring in the trust. And when we want to extend it, then everybody will begin to trust each other that when I give, I will get in return. So it is built over time. It will take time.
Okay, so great point. We're now looking at the idea of knowing, or the concept of knowing, which we say that it is difficult to build relationship if you do not know the parties involved, if you do not know the person involved, and we're trying to expand on the question of knowing. Now, on that particular base, what are you getting to know? What are some of the basic units of which we call the basic unit of relatability, in terms of knowing? So we have a couple of ones. So Isaac, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. So I believe when you are building a relationship, the first step is to collect information. So maybe the basic information, getting to know the person's name, getting to know their likes and their dislikes. And then based on that, you get to know what they also need, and then gradually build on, servicing that need. And then the relationship keeps growing. For instance, in a relationship between a man and a woman, when you meet a girl for the first time and you exchange, basic information like your name, after that, you get to know what the person likes, you get to know what the person needs. If it's money and you start serving that need, you realize that the relationship will begin to grow, trust will grow, and then, you move from one phase of the relationship to the next.
Okay, fantastic point. So we introduced the word name in that, all right? So Eunice says that biodata. Eunice, you are taking us on the high. So yeah, biodata, which we agree, of course, the biodata is what Isaac just talked about. One is name. Obviously, persons want likes and dislikes. Yes, it's also been highlighted. Okay, so yes, we're now considering some of the basic, kind of information, or what we call the basic, a unit of relatability. What makes it possible for people to relate or to form relationships? All right, we have, Isaac just spoke, right? Lawrence.
Yes, Doc. Points of interest. So, for
Point of
example, if I want to, if I meet you in town and I want to have a conversation with you, judging from the previously sitting in your tourism marketing class, I know that if I start a conversation on tourism, it's easier to get the conversation going and then building a relationship from that point.
Excellent, excellent. So the idea of knowing, we've gone past the name, and we're also looking at, the point of interest as it's been highlighted. So what does the person likes to talk about, or what actually interests the person, for example. And of course, in this case, we've introduced value, a value construct here. What is of value to the individuals involved in the conversation? Fantastic. Eunice. Eunice, we're listening to you.
Yes, dog.
Yes, that's a karaoke mode now. So we had a karaoke mode from you. Start again. Okay. Eunice, your network is karaoke. All right. Eunice, can you hear us? So Alimatu talks about a person's background and
ideology based on people's idea. People can relate to each other.
All right. I think we'll get a sense of what you're making. You're saying. So we're talking about the ideological, positions. All right, people's mental frame of thinking. So yeah, ideologies and beliefs set exactly, which comes in the form of people's religious, beliefs, or people's, other identities like their tribes, or their religion, or even their work, or the type of engagement could actually, okay, the person's philosophy as well. Nuruddin is talked about. Okay, great point. All right, so let's move the conversations forward. So beyond the unit of relatability that we're talking about, person's experiences, yes. Again, that actually goes ahead to influence, the relationship, because obviously we learn from what we have been through, isn't it? The kind of things that actually inform the way we behave and inform our attitudes are crucial in relationship development or relationship building. Okay, that's a good point. Now let's extend the conversation further. What kind of, what sets of relationships do you think that people have? If you have to be told of, or if you have to be, if you're asked to actually categorize the kinds of relationships that one is in, for example, how many forms or what forms of relationships can you identify that individually you're in? So if you take one person, for example, yourself, how many relationship forms can you actually identify as you're into? Yeah. Yeah. Isaac, is your hand still up?
I took it down, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So how many forms of relationship can you identify in your life? I mean, any of you?
Friendship.
Okay. So you have to, react. I mean, raise up your hand and then we can go on. Okay. Isaac, do you want to come back? Yeah?
Yes, sir. I was saying friendship.
Yeah, so identify the categories of relationships. I mean, give us a list of categories. Okay, so Nuruddin says family relationship. Pascaline says, partnerships, yes. What else? What else? Forms of relationship can you identify? Professional relationships, such as what? Okay. Formal relationships, such as what? Business relationships, okay. Ekuya, what else relationship do you find? Family, political relationships, yes. Eunice, yes. Great. What else? What other relationships do you find? Self relationship. Okay, Ekuya, now you have to explain that to us. Self relationship. So come on to the microphone and
Okay.
explain. Mhm.
Thank you, Doc. Okay,
Yeah.
so I said self-relationship because I believe that before I can be in a fruitful relationship with someone, I should be able to love myself, have
Okay.
a relationship with myself where I understand myself before I can be part of someone else or other
Fantastic
people.
concept. Yeah. I
So
think
that's why
mhm.
I would say self-relationship.
Now, I think this is a fantastic concept because the point is that, in idea of, especially when it comes to complaints, all right, complaint handling, that majority of customers would actually complain to themselves first before they complain to the organization. All right. Let's say the person experiences a bad service, all right, and they want to give a feedback, which is a complaint to company. What does the person do before that, before they go to complain to the company? Okay, so Shirley says, Doc, please, I'm not able to record. All right, Shirley, don't worry, we're recording and then we can actually put it out, after the class. Courtship, Leila too says courtship. Yeah, that's another form of relationship, right? So yeah, I asked the question, if someone actually experiences a bad service, the first point of complaint is not usually to the company or to their relatives, to themselves. What happens? Who can explain? Yeah? Ekuya, do you want to try? Because you introduced
Okay.
self relationship. Yeah.
Okay, so when a customer experiences a bad, let's say service with a company, you mostly grumble at yourself. You are very angry at yourself. Sometimes you feel that the way you were treated wasn't right because you kind of know the value you place on yourself. So for someone to talk to you anyhow, for someone to treat you as if you are not human because of a service they have to render to you, first of all, you become very upset with yourself before you even complain to another person. So that's the
excellent.
What
Yeah, that's a good idea. Nurdin, do you want to add more?
Sometimes when you experience bad service, you want to examine your part in the mistake so that you'll be sure not to go and embarrass yourself double. So you want to be sure that it is not your fault.
Yeah.
So you examine yourself, you examine your part in the service, then you can go there.
Excellent.
Knowing that you are not at fault, so you can go there and then
fantastic.
Them,
and that's why the point of self relationship that Akuya talked about, the concept of self relationship, is so profound, because you see, at that point you are divided yourself into two. You have two personalities. One is the personality that actually undertook the exercise, i.e., you've gone ahead to buy something. And two is the personality that you know who you were, all right, or you know who you are. So you're asking us, how stupid could you be to have actually undertaken that particular exercise? And you're asking yourself, wow, me pa, how come that I took that decision? Do you get it? Because you know yourself, you know your worth, and you know that you are a very, critical person. And having taken that decision, that sounds stupid. I mean, you claim that you know town, all right? And then somebody sells you matricule, all right? Say, how could I? You know matricule, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, somebody sells you matricule. Then a friend tells you that, but how much did you buy this? You say 100 Ghana. Say, hey, yebu, I don't able to me 50 Ghana. Then you go to your room. Maybe at that point in time, you want to defend your decision, all right? Because you don't want to look stupid. But then you go to your room, you watch, you say, me pan, ya fancy, So at that material moment, you're complaining to yourself because you know your self-worth, all right? So there's a relationship, there's a self-relationship that you have. And before you actually go ahead to complain to the company, you complain to yourself, even to complain to your relatives. At some point in time, you do not want to even do that because, like Nuruddin said, you don't want to look stupid. So to go and tell somebody that you made a stupid decision by buying something that went wrong, you don't want to do that. So you complain to yourself first. So the idea of self-relationship, I think, is very profound, all right? Which is part of relationship building, because you want to understand that, or you want to come to a realization that you know who you are, you know your likes and dislikes, all right? You have a complete, comprehensive examination of your persona, in order that when you're actually having conversation about yourself to somebody and somebody says, what do you like? They say, oh, okay, I know I like this, I like that. People who always say, I don't know what I like, that self-relationship is not there. Do you get it? Because they don't know their persona. They don't know who they are. It's always about external people telling them who they are. But you must have an absolute understanding of your characteristics, of your human being, of your persona, of your personality, of your characteristics. And once you know that, you know when you see something that you don't like, you can see it, that certainly this is not me. Do you get it? And that's why the idea of self-relationship is crucial and it's cardinal in relationship building. All right? Great point. Now, so let's move on the conversation. So we're saying that in building relationship, first of all, we must understand, the building blocks of relationship. And we're saying that one of them is identifying the basic units of relatability. All right. What are the basic units of characteristics or basic unit characteristics that we need to take into consideration in building relationship? And here we have identified things like name. And we're saying that the most basic is about name. All right. Knowing who the person is, I mean, in terms of the name. All right. But the name here may not necessarily be that what we call the natural name or what we call the name that is given to the person. All right. It could be an adopted name. And in the age of internet, we actually know people not necessarily by their natural name, but the name they choose to actually put on. Are you with me? So you go online, you go on social media, and somebody is called Sweetie Pie. You've been interacting with this person for so many years, because those of you who own businesses on social media, on Instagram or on Facebook, I'm sure most of your clients, some of them are even called 123, right? Some of them are called Ekuya Papabi. Yeah, Ekuya Papabi. So in all the transaction that you're having, all right, Ekuya Papabi is the name that you're dealing with. And so the idea of knowing or the name, it is not necessarily the given name or the natural name of the person, but the adopted name. And I remember when we were discussing this in the undergrad class, a lot of people said that most guys actually relate better with their adopted name, or what we call screen name, or whatever name that you use, than the ladies. And there was an argument that most guys actually have bond, and they are in a relationship with people they do not know, whereby they do not know means they don't know their real names. Is that true or false? Yeah,
It's true.
True.
Claudia.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
true,
so tell us
Pop.
your experience.
Oh, there's this guy.
Yeah,
He's like lots of people, me, I like we're very close. So I never knew his real name until, let's say, we met in the uni, like
yeah,
level 100. I
yeah,
never knew his real name until I think 400. There was even through a conversation with someone else,
yeah.
and I got to know
What
he's
was this
called
name that you
Rola.
knew? What was this name that you knew?
Everybody calls him Rola.
Rola.
But then, yes, but then um his real name is Richard Hagen.
Okay. Yeah.
So
And he responded better to Rola.
yes, everybody. Sometimes they can mention somebody's name. You know the person just by the nickname.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that maybe you're close to the person, and then the person. How do I even say it? You go somewhere else, and then the person they mention another like name, and you're confused. And so maybe somebody close to you will just say, "Ah, it is this person," before you know that. Yeah.
Excellent.
So that is it's a normal thing.
Okay. Ekuya, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
No, I was. To me, I think it's not entirely true, but I stand to differ.
Yeah.
Because there are some people that I'm personally not somebody who talks to people more on social media. I would like to meet you in person to really, because I have this mentality that there's a better relationship I'll form with you if I get to know who you are than speaking behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So from my stand, I don't really think it's entirely true.
That is another part of the conversation that we had, that debate that we had in the undergrad class, that most of the time perhaps is the feminine bit that is actually informing that, because the argument was more girls, or most girls, would rather want to know you deeper, with where the knowing extends beyond the basic unit of relatability, like knowing the name, but they would want to go beyond that, in establishing relationship, than guys. Guys, according to that debate, are most of the time superficial. They can strike a bond without necessarily going beyond the name, or even beyond the adopted name, and still roll out and still have a fantastic relationship. All right. So
very true.
Does that actually, plug into what Ekuya is saying? Does that actually plug into the feminine, concept of knowing beyond the name? Therefore, you said true. So go on and let's hear your point.
Yes, Doc. I think guys have this thing of just meeting each other and just clicking.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You might not even know your name till the end of the day or something. An example is, maybe you're going to meet a friend, and that friend comes with another friend. you just go, and because he knows they know each other, you all just bond and you just pick up from there.
Okay,
But
good point.
for the little I know, but the little I know women, they are quite picky with the people they pick as friends. They don't really bond right on the spot. You have to
Okay.
get to know you a bit before they gel.
Okay, so the
So for
debate is
guys,
right here now. Can the women defend themselves? All right. Yeah, the
They
debate is
can't.
here.
They can't.
Dog,
Yeah.
it's
This is
true.
true. Shelley,
Shelley,
yeah.
yes, because you don't know someone, and then you don't know, you just meet the person. The person tells you, "I'm Jack," or "My name is Ro," and then you want to find out, Ro, what? I want to know your full name. Where do you stay? Beyond that, because you
don't you know your
you
mother
don't
and
know
father
what will
or
happen to you. You are scared. We
Yeah.
are fragile. So
Yes.
in terms of something, you have to find out if something happens, you know where you trace from, you know information. But if you don't know anything, the person say, I'm Jack. And then that is so something happens and they tell you, ask you, what is the person's name? You say, also a friend is Jack. Oh. Like, you look stupid. Then they tell you, you look
Exactly.
stupid.
I think so
You
too.
tell your mom or your dad, I
That's
met a friend.
interesting conversation. I mean,
You tell your mom or
Alimati
dad.
said, I think the women are being extra careful or cautious. That's another part of the
Yeah.
concept that was
Yes,
introduced.
because dog, even if
Yeah,
you
that we
want
are
to marry,
women are
you go
very
home and you tell
emotional
your mom
sometimes.
or dad, I met a man. They'll ask you, what is the name? Which family? Where is the hometown? What work? And then they'll question you further to know. So before
Okay.
you even get to the house, you have to do your homework
Um,
well. In case
Okay.
something happens, like you know you're on the safer side. But
Okay.
guys, they think they can protect themselves. For us, we are little in protecting ourselves. We
I
forget
think
things a lot.
Okay, so we
Until
are
you
not, the
careful and you
gendering
get
part of
on
the
the right
conversation
track.
is not coming in.
That's my
Okay, yeah.
opinion.
Doug, I think it's just the nature of how a woman is. We
Mm-hmm.
intend to think we don't forget things very easily as compared to guys. A guy can just meet you, have a interaction with you, and just that it's just off his head. But women, we intend to keep every detail you give us in our memory. So before we try to protect ourselves by knowing who you are, by going the extra mile. Before if we open up because as my colleagues rightly said, we are
Now
fragile
you
and
have to
easily
know
break.
your colleague's name and use it. Which colleague?
Okay, so I think Shelley made a very good point, and I think Sadia Halima to Sadia too, talking about we being we try to be careful because we are fragile, and that's buttresses the point that unlike guys, they can just meet you. I mean, a guy talking to one lady is talking to more ladies, so you're not the only person he talks to. He talks to you today. If we are playing hard to get, I mean, he always has plan Bs. But unlike women, we open up easily. So
Yeah.
try to
Usually.
protect ourselves before we get there. So I
Okay.
think that's the nature of a woman.
Wow, amazing point. Now let me read that. Eunice says, "Doug, women take a lot of things into consideration, but guys don't really care about certain things. Doug, our emotions also play a part." Alimatu said, and Isaac said, "A." Okay, so so right now the conversation is now taking a certain in a theoretical perspectives which had been highlighted earlier about the idea of, in relationship, there are two sides of attitudes that are actually coming in. The cognitive and then the affective part of human being, all right, human attitudes. Now, the idea that obviously the cognitive part, we're talking about more facts, factual based, kind of things to know. So the person's name, the person's whereabouts, where they come from, where they reside, etc. All right. And then, of course, the emotive part, looking at much more emotional part of the human being, understanding the person's psyche, the person's, what we call feelings, the way their perspective, the way they look at things, all right, etc. So there was a debate about women invest more emotive or affective, or they consider much more, or in terms of relationship building, they come from more affective position than the cognitive position. And then the men comes from more, a cognitive position than affective position. And that debate was also, at play. Clancy said, I don't think women open up easily. And Ekuya said, I agree, Clancy. So do we accept that women approach relationship from a much more affective than cognitive position, or from a cognitive than affective position, and vice versa? What's the position? Because we've talked about the idea that women would ask you for more information, but also we're talking about the idea that you want to protect yourself because of possible injury, or an anticipation of danger, etc. Does that mean they are combining both, or they are more inclined toward one side, or Clancy?
Okay, thank you, Doc. I think it's a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
And then affective. Case in point, maybe when you are getting to know someone, you basically keep your emotions at bay because you actually want to know what or who you are getting into. So when you're comfortable with the person you're getting into, and then you guys want to take it to the next step, at a certain point, the cognitive becomes lesser than the affective.
Okay, so you are saying that the cognitive,
until you actually give her a reason to use her cognitive her cognitive senses. But usually she's cognitive until maybe she gets into a relationship with the person, and then she becomes a bit more affective than cognitive.
Okay. Eunice says, Doc, women emotions and affections play first. Laila to say, women would like to keep things for long, so they take time to accept things. All right. So the guys, I haven't heard from you. Do you approach from cognitive, from affective positions, relationships?
Doc, I think for guys, it is affective.
It's from affective. You invest,
yes,
you look at it from more emotional perspective, or not necessarily emotional as in, but from bonding perspective, instead of being very cognitive about hard facts, etc.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great point. Pascaline says that past experiences also determine which way will come first. Okay, I agree. Clancy says I agree. To Leila. Okay, that's great. So we see that in relationship building, there are quite a different perspectives, even from a demographic standpoint. Where some of the ladies, most of you ladies are actually defining the idea of knowing beyond name, etc. And then of course the guys saying that no, well, it may not be necessary, but you could actually get, once you have something in common, you think you can bond immediately. Well, Lauren says, Doc, I don't think it's about the genders, even though that's more general. It's about individual personalities. All right, is that true? Is that a generic gender issue, or individual personalities, as Lawrence is saying? And another thing, let me introduce the kind of attitudinal what called response that we give to relationship. Is that societal, or it's an gender issue? Is it a societal issue? Does it come across as because of society's expectation? Because a lot of things were like, what if your mom asks you, where's the guy from, etc.? Is it a matter of societal expectation that you must know more just in case something happens? Or is a gender issue that regardless of societal expectations, women are into detail, men are superficial? Yeah? Okay, Nuruddin.
Yeah, I think it's when it comes to women and then men are more cognitive, as in we tend to think about hard facts, but women are detailed in their thinking and more emotional. And so sometimes the reason why sometimes we have difficulty in relationship is when men become so stubborn and not willing to look at things from the perspective of the women. So when it comes to the issue of the bit you introduced about the societal, it also plays a part. Women don't want to find themselves in trouble, so they want to please their parents, their moms, and so they want to be the good girls. But the guys sometimes don't care, so they want to be stubborn, so they will do their things, and then they'll come and then they'll take the flock.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, something like
thank
that.
you. Okay, right, that's a good point by Nuruddin. Okay, Clancy, a lot of you are saying a bit of both. Eunice says, I think it's more societal. Leila to say women are into detail. I think society plays a role. Ikuya said, and then Clancy said a bit of both. Alimatu said the society plays a part, but the gender role play key part of the whole issue. Okay, so Clancy, let's listen to you.
Okay, thank you. I feel like it's a bit of both. Maybe women are known to be more emotional than generally. Let me say it that way. That women are known to be more emotional than men, or more affective than men, and men are known to be more cognitive. But then if you then bring in the societal rules, or you bring in society, you realize that women like to conform to rules than men do. So I also think that sometimes, due to the way women usually, when it comes to things like this, women are usually more rational, let me put it that way, than to societal rules than men. Because usually, if you look back, even way back into medieval times, you realize that even if a man is to go out with a lady without a chaperone, she's ruined. She's not deemed to be marriageable anymore. Fortunately, nowadays it's not like that. But then still, you still think about and you still think about saying, like, what will society think of me if I'm found with this guy I am not married to after certain hours? So you are forced, in a sense, to conform. But a guy, he doesn't care. I mean, as long as he feels he hasn't done anything untoward with you, he can spend 24 hours with you. As long as he's not done anything, he is not bothered. Even if he does something, a lot of them are still not bothered.
Okay, great point. All right, Lawrence, let's hear you, and then we'll move the conversation forward. Lawrence.
Yes. I mentioned earlier that I believe it's about individual personalities, and that also relates to the social construct also, because even though individual personalities may push people to do certain things, society views the guys as hard guys and things. So even if a guy wants to take a relationship from the affective perspective, it's most likely going to be hidden. So I think it's the individual personalities, but then having to live in a patriarchal society has sort of influenced the feelings of guys to go sort of below. So that's why I feel it's individual, but then the society doesn't permit guys to be as expressive, as emotional as we see ladies do. So that's why I generally assume that it's a gendered thing.
Oh, okay. So there is a societal pressure for people to be conformist, for people to be conforming to the expectations of society. So guys are actually not becoming expressive because they think that there's an expectation for them to be, something else. Clancy, you want to say something? Clancy, your hand is up, or it's the old one? Okay, so that's a good point. So let's bring that conversation forward to in terms of the discipline itself. Now, having understood the way perhaps the perspectives of relationship coming from both men and women, for example, who then would you say is best placed to handle a relationship role in business? Should it be you? Are you getting a lot more quality relationship management from a female or than from a from a female than a male, or vice versa, or is dependent?
Look,
Timon.
Yeah, I would say women.
So you're getting a lot more quality relationship management from women than men.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
What is your justification, your rationale?
I would say that because women tend to pay attention to details, like yes, they get emotionally attached to anything. Let's say, for instance, the job, unlike men.
So they are applying both the cognitive and the affective side of them very well, because the idea of attention to detail means that they are, cognitively much more aware. And then, of course, the emotive part of it is actually coming to play as well. Okay, Eunice.
Thank you, Doc. I feel like men will be good with that than women, because most of the times, from personal experience, when I go to offices and I meet, say, customer service relationship people, the men are about the work, but the women tend to relate to you based on whatever it is that is going on with them, or however they are feeling. And so most of the times when you meet women at front desk, their reception is not so nice like when you meet men at front desk.
Oh, wow. That's interesting perspective as well. All right, great point. Let me read something here first. Of course, a barrel says female. It could say it is dependent on something. Okay. And then Stephanie says women are very good at multitasking. Isaac says, I believe it is both. You need both a good balance of cognitive and affective abilities to manage relationship. Patricia says, I believe women are more empathetic than men. Okay. Next person, who was coming in?
Doc, I would like to comment on Eunice's.
Yeah,
I think it depends on the gender the woman is attending to. Because I, for instance, have experienced it. Like, if the woman is attending to a guy, customer service.
Yeah.
If a woman is attending to a guy, it's different from how a woman attends to a woman.
Yeah, give us
I don't know
scenario.
why. Yeah, like they tend to give attitude to women who maybe are more fashionable. Like I don't know how to describe it. Like,
okay.
Doc, I disagree.
Let's say the woman.
To some extent.
Yeah.
Okay, who can explain?
I think I have a different perspective.
Doc,
Okay,
I disagree.
So, who disagrees? The one who disagrees, come in.
Can I come in?
Doc,
Yeah.
I think what Eunice is saying is right. Because if we take the bank setting, for example.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, we've lost Bafo. Nuruddin, come in.
I think my point is about
common.
Hello.
Most women, depending on who approach you, even though if you are hostile or not, we know some are hostile by nature.
Okay. All right.
No, I doubt.
Hello.
Yeah, Nuruddin, come in.
Yes. I think that when it comes to professional relationship, that in my estimation is that has no relationship with the gender. It is about the training.
Okay.
Your training. So depending on the kind of training you have, that will determine the outcome or the output of your work.
Okay.
So some people are trained. It doesn't matter the agenda. So based on the training, just like we are in the class, we are beginning to develop new perspectives, understand certain things, so that if we find ourselves in either in class or in workplaces, we'll be able to affect the places.
Fantastic.
Based on the new things we have gained.
Okay.
So when it comes to professional relationship, I think that one has nothing to do with gender. But if it is personal, as in a woman and a man, that is where, because normally we get into relationship without having any training and anything. So everybody's using his own understanding. So we have challenges there.
Okay,
But
great point.
professional training, yeah.
Great point. Isaac says he agrees with you. He says you're on point. But let me question this point that you made, Nuruddin. Does that mean that people actually compartmentalize their relationships, and so there is no room for transfer of skills? Because the kind of relationship skills that they have, which they are actually executing or applying in their role of work, all right, why are they not, in your suggestion, why are they not able to transfer into their other relationship of maybe marriage, for example? Because if you actually have a particular skill set that you are actually, using at workplaces, and you think, as you said, the training that you've got makes you a very good relationship manager, why can't you then transfer the same skill set into your marriage relationship, that other set of relationships, in order that you become better at each of them? Why that gap? Why that, what do you call, lack of transfer?
Misfit, yeah.
Yeah, skills. Why that? What do you think? What would you say?
I think that when it comes to a professional, the motivation is the reward, the salary.
And that's what Stephanie is saying. Sometimes
and then the fear of dismissal.
Okay.
So the person is on his feet trying to give out so that he will be maintained, get promotion.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the house, sometimes our inability to manage our own emotions. And because we don't have, like, there is nothing on us that scares us of losing the partners, so we are not forced to apply.
Okay.
To transfer.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic insight. I mean, Stephanie says sometimes there's no emotion, which there's no motivation at home, which actually backtracks the point that you're making. Bafo says that personality play a key role in every relationship, whether professional or informal. Now, let me give the chance to other people. Ekia, come in with your point before I make my point.
Okay, so personally, I feel both genders can hold a professional role, but if I have to pick from my opinion, I'll give it to men, because I had the opportunity to head as the HR manager in an oil and firm organization. And there were some decisions you have to pick, like maybe sacking someone because the person wasn't doing duties well, or cautioning people and all of that. But sometimes it's like you look at the point that maybe the person has a child, the person has this. If you have to sack the person, what then becomes of their family and all of that? So sometimes making certain decisions was difficult from my end. But then because you are the manager, you have to, make the decision. But and sometimes with women, sometimes every time of the month, you have some people that have, the cycle makes you moody, and sometimes we make decisions based on how we feel at that point in time. But I think with a man, maybe using my position with a man, being a manager and someone else, the person would have handled it better, because I was attaching a lot of emotions and affections to some decisions I had to take, which I felt was too harsh. I felt, can't we, massage the decision a little or all of that? But it's coming from the managing director that you have to sack this person. And what do you then do? So personally, I would think that a man would have handled the issue better than I did. That's my own, view on that.
Okay, so Eunice says, I totally agree with you. Bafo says, I totally agree with you. Right, Eunice, let's hear you. Eunice.
Doc, I think...
Yeah, Eunice, your karaoke is back. You probably have to check your networks where you are. But if you can't control it, fine. You can
already made
Okay. Eunice, I think you can type your points so that we read it out, because your network doesn't seem to help us on that front. All right. Please, I already made my point. Okay, great. She says she's already made a point. All right, thank you. So we're saying that, yes, the characteristics possibly could inform, the function. All right, the kind of discussion that we've had. about gender and whether gender has an impact in relationship management, whether social or what do you call formal relationship. And we've actually come to a conclusion that perhaps training could in a moderate, or training could actually influence the behavior that would actually expect, or the attitude that we actually expect in relationship, which is fantastic. But of course, the gap of how come that people cannot transfer that skill set they've gained into the other social relationship, or into the other set of relationship, is something that we must look at. Because the idea of motivation, which is introduced as at the workplace, you're motivated because of, one, you don't want to be sacked, or two, you're being paid to do a job. What about in a relationship, for example, the marriage relationship? You also have a motivation. You could lose your marriage, isn't it? You could get divorced because of not performing in terms of relationship perspective. Your husband or your wife can actually divorce you. So that is also an incentive enough, or motivation enough to be able to transfer your skill set in relationship from professional perspective onto the marriage perspective, isn't it? So why is it that difficulty? Why is that what do you call that gap? Nuri, do you want to react?
Yes. Sometimes I think that it depends on the people or the individual involved. Mm-hmm. Some people, their perspective, their understanding of the marriage, they feel that if he's married to somebody, is a favor, and looking at his position, he is manager this, manager that, so he's doing the wife a favor, so he can behave the way he wants to behave. Or if it is a woman, now she is a manager and the man is maybe below, so she doesn't care, and when she can lose the marriage, and
so
she
the
can
point
move
that you're
on.
making is that the understanding of motivation is quite different. The conceptualization of motivation is quite different from a professional perspective, to the other social perspective. Okay, Bafo.
No, the point I'm making is that the person at the workplace, has both sides. He wants promotion and is afraid of losing his job.
Okay.
But in the house, he feels he has everything. He is on top.
Okay.
So he doesn't consider losing the marriage as a motivating factor for him to do it right.
Fantastic. Okay, that's
the point I'm making.
All right, fantastic, amazing point. Okay, Bafo, you're here. Ekua says, I did not get your question well, Doc. Okay, so we're saying that that we introduced the idea of motivation, that actually kind of moderates, the relationship, behavior or functions, all right? And saying that at workplaces, perhaps because of our expectation of being paid to do a particular job, or losing your work, or even gaining, a promotion, also influence, or it's also part of the reasons why, regardless of man or woman, at that position, would actually perform, or have a very good output in terms of relationship, all right, management. But then I was asking that, why is it that we're not able to transfer that skill set that we have gained in managing relationship into our marriage, so that we could equally be good at managing the marriage, than what do you call, just as we're managing relationship at work, our professional perspective. And Nuruddin is saying that the motivations are different. At workplaces, you have maybe 3 or 4-fold, motivations. At the work, at home, we are taking it for granted. I mean, maybe the person is below you, and so you don't really see it as a motivation as you would, at workplaces. All right, good. Someone's hand was up.
Doc, Bafo.
Yes, Bafo, yeah.
Yes, Doc. I think it's all about personality, because right now at work, from the professional perspective, we are looking at it. It's just your relationship with customers. Mm-hmm. But we should also know that there might be people who are very good customers but very bad with their own colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And that personality plays at work and also at home. So whether the person is motivated at work that they're going to get money or are going to get promotion, it's all based on their personality. Because if that person is not a nice person at home, that same person is not going to be a nice person at work.
Okay.
So the personality really plays a key role, because you know, as you said, dog, if you are not, you can get divorced. That's a motivation now for you to do good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
So I think
So
personality
the
is the
idea
main.
that the person, if they are not good at home, you probably will not be good at work, then negates the idea of motivation at the workplace then, because then of course it doesn't matter really. You know, whether there is motivation at workplace or not, you probably will not be good because you're not good at home. That's the position that Bafo you're coming from, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, and Patricia says that marriage relationships tend to be more informal compared to work relationships. Of course, but can we also say that perhaps it's dependent on the parties involved? Because at workplaces, the motivation from the supply perspective, i.e. the one who actually providing the role, the service role, has expectation about promotions, a possible sack, etc., salary, whereas the customer is also having a certain expectation. And so the two of them, there's a confluence, you know, of what do you call relatability attributes. And that makes them perform their role, you know, as expected. But in the work at home, perhaps there are differentials in the motivation. All right. And because of the differential in motivation, that is actually affecting the role play there. All right. And I hear Isaac says exactly, you know, and Alima too also agrees on that, you know, perspective. Okay. That's a good conversation that we've had, you know, on that particular side. Now, let's look at other factors. What do you think are the other factors that actually impact, you know, on the relationships? You know, I mean, all of us here will probably have about, you know, in school you may have about 10 people that you know, but you probably have time for only about 2 or 3 of them. All right. Now, when we talk about relationships, set of relationships, all right, we probably could have about 10 sets of relationships or 2 sets or 3 sets of relationships. What do you think are the factors that are informing your contribution to these sets of relationships? What are some of the factors? Earlier on, we're asking you to identify the forms of relationship, which we talked about, all right? Now, what do you think are the factors that are actually informing these set of relationships, and how do we categorize them? Okay, Ikea says, because once you fully understand it, it becomes part of you, irrespective of where you find yourself. Okay, as in the relationship forms. Okay, Alimatu, is your hand up?
Yeah, Doc, please. It was for the earlier submission.
Okay, earlier submission.
About the so I was trying to make it's in reference with the point you raised that in a relationship earlier on you said it involves 2 or more people. So the motivation would be part of the other person you are dealing with. So at the workplace, when the person you are dealing with, either your bosses or the person making the complaint, the effort the person is making would show how you would relate with the person, as well as home. How maybe if you're having issues with your marriage and then the other partner is not making any effort, or you are trying to be the only person making effort to make the relationship work. If the other person is not working, no matter how motivated you are, trying to make sure that the divorce doesn't come on, it will affect how your communication or how you put all your efforts. Sometimes you end up being reluctant, and then you realize that you just have to let the thing be as it is.
Okay, fantastic point. Great point. Okay, so let's move on to the other. What factors are actually impacting, or what are some of the considerations that actually impact on the relationship management? You know, the kind of relationships that we have identified. And I think quite a number of ideas here. Balfour says common ideologies. Ekuya says communication. Beryl says common interest. Intimacy, Ekuya says. Alimatu says growth. Loyalty. Laila to say loyalty. Okay, so let's have a conversation. Those points that you have made. Can you expand on that? Who starts?
Yes, Doc, me, Shelley.
Shelley.
Yes, Doc. Like we take trust. If I
Mhm.
meet you and then we are into something and I'm seeing that there's no trust, I'll not go on further, because if there's no trust, I'm scared to go further. And then there's no common interest. I don't have interest in what you are saying. And the other party also doesn't have interest, or one has interest, the other party doesn't have, vice versa. You see, like the relationship doesn't stand well, it doesn't grow. But if all of you agree on one thing, you have common interest, you see that you progresses further, and then it progresses further, and then you see that you grow strong, and then whatever you want to do, you have a common understanding, and then you take a decisive stand when you are doing something. But if there's interest there, like everybody has taken its part, and then it doesn't click.
Okay, so interest and what do you call trust are actually moderating, relationships. The attitude, the way you actually respond to a particular set of relationships. A great point. Mutual understanding. Somebody is saying mutual understanding. Okay, that is honorable. Honorable says that mutual understanding is also one of the things that moderates. So, who wants to expand on their points as well? Who wants to expand on their point that they've raised?
Okay, Doc, I'll speak on the intimacy I said. Yeah, so when we talk about intimacy, I'm not talking about the sexual part of intimacy. Because to have an intimate relationship with somebody is to deeply understand the person and have a connection with the person. It doesn't have to do with getting touchy or physically, attached to the person. And once you have, so that's one of the things that will make me have time for some friends as compared to some friends, because you want to have a relationship with people that you can speak with them and they understand where you are coming from.
Excellent.
People that you share the same ideologies about things, and that's my contribution on the intimacy.
Excellent, fantastic point. Shared philosophy, Nuruddin also says. Yes, who else want to expand on their points? So we've had trust, we've had interest, we have intimacy, some of the factors that will moderate relationships. Who else has a point to make?
Yeah, Doc, I also spoke about communication.
Communication, okay.
I think before any relationship is held, there has to be a communication among the two parties. You have to say something for me to know what you want to express or what I'm also trying to express. So I think communication is very key in any relationship.
Okay.
That is
established channel of communication, and that continuous one. Well, Eunice says money. Loyalty says loyalty, knowing the person has my best interest at heart. Fantastic. Yeah. So Alimatu, yeah.
With the growth, I'm also looking at the fact that every relationship shouldn't be stagnant. It should move from one level to the other. So the level of growth, how the impact is making would also influence you, because if the relationship is not going to a certain level where there will be benefit, I don't think it's something worth maintaining.
Okay, so we're looking at the objectives, all right? The set objectives, shared by the parties involved, or the goals involved. Okay, great point. Nuruddin. Nuruddin, are you there?
Yes. Yes. There must be shared philosophy. Basically, it's about shared beliefs, their perspectives, their views, and their direction must be in unison. It should be in one direction.
Yeah.
So when two people meet and they have the same belief, the work will become less as compared to people who have different perspectives and always quarreling, arguing. But if you have a shared belief, agreeing becomes easy because you all have shared beliefs. It can be faith, as in religion. It can be tribe. It can be basically the interest the two of you share. If it is mutual, then you can build the relationship based on that. That will be the foundation.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So we agree that yes, for a relationship to thrive or to be developed and managed, there must be resources. That is, the relationship will be moderated by what resources in terms of material and time. So we're looking at money, as somebody says. Otherwise, I mean, you have 100 people that you know, and that perhaps you say that you have a relationship with. Why do you tend to, what do you call, have only 2 or 3 as your close relationships? Why? Because there is not enough time. We all have what, 24 hours. Now, within that 24 hours, you couldn't actually possibly say that you're going to share that hours with everybody equally. So definitely there must be a selection or a segmented and targeting of a certain group of people, a certain set of relationship, with a certain group of people that you call close relationship, and they are the ones that you spend, times with, and that brings us to the question of intimacy, the question of trust, the question of, objectives, the question of all that we've talked about. So we're saying that relationships perhaps are influenced, by, the resource availability, that is material and time, and values. So we can actually categorize all these things that we've talked about in these 3, and perhaps expand them. But in the meantime, we can say material, which is, money, other, what do you call, material resources, and then time, and then of course value, shared growth, shared all these things that we're talking about, So yes, we realize that as introduction, we have scattered around informally trying to tease out what actually goes into what we call relationship. And from this point that we've made, you could realize that when it comes to business or relationship marketing, as we're talking about, all these things go into it. There is divorce in relationship, all right? There is what do you call, somebody would say, how do you put it? When you are 2-timing people, what's the name? What's the name when you are 2-timing people? Like when somebody is flirting with almost everybody. How do you call it?
Is a flirt or is a cheat?
A cheat. There's cheating. Yeah.
It's
There's
a flirt.
cheating. There's cheating in
Yeah, okay. That's it.
What did he say?
Player.
Player, yeah. There are players in corporate world. There are people, customers who are not satisfied. I mean, the company gives them everything, loyalty schemes. They're getting buy one, get one free. They're giving them all the offers, all right? Yet they are flirting with another company, So all these things that we've talked about are in a corporate relationship, just as we have them in what do you call social relationships. Again, availability of resources, all right? There's a limited resources that we have at our disposal. We do not have a bottomless pocket as a business. The business has a budget that you're supposed to actually spend within. You cannot actually say that you're spending all your budget on all the customers. It is not possible. And that's why in relationship marketing, there must be a loyalty scheme. So there must be segmentation and targeting and ranking and categorization of your customers so that you know which customers you share 20% of the time with or 20% of the budget with, and which customers you share 50% of the time with or 50% of the budget with. You cannot actually say you're going to spend time for everybody else. Otherwise, you're not being rational, all right? You're not actually being relational, because relational means there is, time limitation, there's a resource limitation. And so you must identify, the group of relationships, and then you know how to deal with. Again, you have to actually have a set of relationships, like we said. We have relationships with family, we have relationships with academic colleagues, we have relationships with our boyfriends and girlfriends, we have relationships with our teachers, we have relationships with so many other sets of relationships. So you couldn't actually go into company perspective and say you have only one bulk of relationships. It's not happening. You have to have categories, set of relationships, and then define them in order that you'll be able to do and manage them appropriately. All right. So all the things that we've talked about here in terms of relationships, types, in terms of factors that actually influence relationships, in terms of the basic unit of relatability. What makes people relate? What makes people bond? What makes people go into relationships are all factors that we see in corporate relationships. Because if you do not actually have names for your customers, how do you relate to them? So the person comes to the office and says, hello, I'm going to see somebody. They call you on the phone. You do not have a mechanism that allows you to take down the basic unit of relatability, i.e. the biodata. How would you be able to relate to them appropriately? So all these things that we've talked about in summation are things that we expect to go into corporate relationships, as we're calling it, relationship marketing. I'm sure that it's been very easy for us to identify the kind of things that we're expecting on this particular course, going through these type of identification informally though. I'm sure you have actually come to appreciate that. Nuruddin, your hand is up.
Doc, sorry to interrupt, but we have a class at 1:30.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I was going to say that that's a wrap up. We've actually, wrapped up the class anyway. All right, guys, thank you so much. I've enjoyed the interactivity and I expect this to continue. I hope you have actually enjoyed it as well.
Yes, please.
Yes, Doc.
All right.
Yes, Doc.
All right.
Yes, please.
So we'll meet next week. I would actually get the recording then and then, circulate the link to you guys. Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
so
please.
please, do we get the
Yes, please.
soft copies of the lecture notes?
Yeah. I'll send the slides and then the course outline to your class rep, and then he will share it. Okay, Isaac.
Okay, Doc.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Doc.
For coming.
Doc, please, the questionnaire link.